attending. This project has been 4 years in the making, and it is so exciting to see it come to fruition. First of all, we have to thank all of our donors, and I'm sure many of you here have donated towards this project. Without your support, this day would not be happening. We would also like to thank the mayor and the city of Johnstown and its officials for allowing us to put the statue in the park and the use of the park today. We have to give a huge thank you to City Engineer Chris Voss and the whole Department of Public Works. There were a couple gentlemen around here earlier, so if you see them in the bright yellow shirts, thank them. They did a lot of prep work for this, getting the statue foundation ready and installing it, and a lot of extras that went above and beyond, so thank you. We'd also like to thank James Hannes for organizing the food trucks and over here in the ice cream for this event. And this event would not be complete without mentioning and thanking some of our special guests who are celebrating with us here today. So as I read your name, if you want to stand and wave, that's fine. If you just want to stay where you are, that's fine. We still thank you. Greg Truckenmiller, our wonderful new president at FMCC. Carol Griffith, New York State AAUW VP of Development. She came here from Buffalo. Josh Williams, Representative Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Robert Smollett, our local New York State Assemblyman. I'm not sure, I haven't seen him yet, but Jim Tedisco, our local New York State Senator. Lauren Roberts, Saratoga County Historian. Christine Heller, a suffrage artist. Renee Felice, a Lucreta Mock actor. Osama Mustafa, who is videotaping this event for us, so we have it for posterity. Carm Diamor, who is doing photography for us. Elaine Anadito, councilperson from Gloversville. John Stead, Fulton County Executive. John Blackman, supervisor from Gloversville. Mark Baracco, representative from Governor Hochul's office. Bill Crangshaw, superintendent of Johnstown Schools. And Chad Brown, Fulton County DA. Please know that we appreciate all of you for taking time from your busy day to attend this event with us to celebrate Elizabeth. I apologize if I missed anyone, but we're glad and appreciate that you came today. Be sure to visit the information table to receive some great handouts. There's bags, pens, magnets, and more. After the unveiling, please feel free to have your picture taken with Elizabeth and enjoy the food at the food trucks. And there's some ice cream over there that might taste really good right now. So to start our program off, I'd like to invite Mayor Vern Jackson up to say a few words to us. And again, thank you for your support and help with this project, Mayor.
Thank you for inviting me here today to participate in this unveiling. It was my understanding it has taken quite a long time to reach this moment. It's apparent by the crowd here today it was worth the wait. After completing her education and working in her father's law office, she learned of the many discriminatory laws the women of that time had to live with and made the decision to work on securing equal rights for women. She became a frequent speaker on women's rights and was instrumental in securing the passage of legislation granting married women property rights in 1848 here in New York State. Her continued efforts also resulted in new legislation in 1860 granting married women the rights to their wages and equal guardianship of their children. Major pieces of legislation for that time. One fact that I find most interesting, and have mentioned this before, was when she married Henry Brewster Stanton in 1840, she insisted the word obey be dropped from the wedding ceremony. To see the expressions on the faces of the men had to be priceless. Right. Elizabeth laid the groundwork by working tirelessly on behalf of women's rights. Those efforts can be seen not only here in this country, but throughout the entire world. Congratulations to all of you for your hard work in getting this fitting tribute here in Johnstown. Thank you.
I'd like to invite James Hannes up to the podium. Is he over there? Oh, okay. He's a Gloversville Downtown Development Specialist, Fulton County Center for Regional Growth. Long title, James. But he's responsible for getting the food trucks for us to hear. So James, you want to say a few words?
Feels good every time, doesn't it? Okay. Cindy, thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the consortium for having me here today. It's an honor to be here on behalf of the Fulton County Center for Regional Growth on this special occasion to commemorate such a significant and historic figure that has roots here in Johnstown. For those who don't know, the Fulton County Center for Regional Growth is the countywide economic development agency throughout Fulton County. We are in place to help Fulton County's economy grow one business at a time. When involved in economic development, it's important to understand what makes businesses and communities successful and how to leverage them to help them grow. It's vitally important as well to both expand businesses and grow Fulton County's economy, also while maintaining the integrity of our community roots. Historically, our communities have thrived off the leather industry. Thousands of households were supported through glove making and other ancillary industries. Many of you standing here today may have ancestors or living relatives that continue to work for the industry or in some capacity of glove making. As CRG markets the county and pushes towards future prosperity in search of other industries, one attribute of success in Fulton County has stayed consistent. It's driven the curiosity of folks to conduct business, visit, and stay in Fulton County. That attribute is history, or shall I say herstory. While the value of our historic nature is woven into the fabric of our community, there is a reason for much of it to stay in history books. Industries and technology grow obsolete, the flows wane back into ebbs, and legacies fade after decades of inactivity. But today's dedication is an example of a legacy that does not stop in history books. Today we celebrate the legacy of a woman whose work continues to be done long after her time on earth is ended. The impact of Elizabeth Cady Stanton's work was monumental in the singular act of suffrage, but it was a milestone on a long journey to complete equality. To this day, there's still work to be done on this front. Women everywhere are in the process of overcoming barriers such as wage gaps, glass ceilings, access to women's focused healthcare. But this statue is not only a reminder of the role that Johnstown played in the upbringing of Elizabeth, but also represents the embodiment of her mission to achieve sweeping women's rights. So with the amazing women of this community, the amazing women of the Elizabeth Cady Stanton Women's Consortium, the amazing women of various organizations such as 100 Women Who Care of the Adirondack Foothills, and of course, all of the women who live and work here, I truly believe that Elizabeth would be more than proud to have placed her work in your hands. Thank you.
Our next speaker is one of those amazing women, because of Elizabeth, that's here. Our first and only woman to be mayor of Elizabeth's hometown, Sarah Slingerland.
Hello, it's kind of nice to follow the fellow that brought the food trucks. It's been a while since I worked a mic, so you'll have to give me some instruction. Well, it is an honor to be here today to celebrate Elizabeth Cady Stanton's legacy, but also her inspiration. She planted the seeds of inspiration for social justice, but also women's leadership. Can you imagine something so significant people are celebrating yet 100 years later? Can you imagine being that person 100 years and people are still celebrating what she did? Evidence of Elizabeth's work is clearly seen in the many, many examples of women in leadership roles in our community. In business, way back, Rose Knox gained international and national recognition in the business world. And she gave us that wonderful Knox Field where when we attend events there, our spirits are lifted. How about Arlene Sitterly? Great business story, great realtor, started a huge business, and many people had forgotten that this whole block was lined with buildings. And under an urban renewal program, I think with Mayor Peter Wilson, she was able to orchestrate taking down all of those buildings and creating this wonderful park right in the center of Johnstown. In business also is Pat Beck, who was a publisher of our Leader Herald. And during my tenure as mayor, most of the Main Street businesses were co-owned and managed by women. In government service from Johnstown, we look back to someone like Mary Hegel Niles, who in the 1940s served as a Navy nurse in the Navy Nurse Corps. And Kay Cole, I believe, was the first woman who ever was on the Johnstown City Council. Holly Hoy serves as one of our judges. And Mary Ann Mowry was one of the first female firefighters for Johnstown. And I understand we now have 2 female police officers, and we're so very proud of them. In education, our Board of Education has had numerous members from the community. Way back when Catherine Monahan was around, and Barb Skoda, Catherine Zajac, Sharon Ritzman, Sue Fratangelo, Eva Mraz, and many, many other women have stepped it up, spent long hours working for our school district and our children. In continuation, Nancy Baird Brown has created a curriculum for 4th graders to ensure that our young people are exposed to the value and the information about Elizabeth Cady Stanton and social justice. We've had plenty of principals and superintendents from Johnstown who are women, like Joyce Caputo and Kathy Sullivan. Our public library has been run by several females, Barb Germain, and now Erica Wing, and way back before that was Nina Bovee. Friends of the Library has always been strong in our public library through women's leadership, with Sally Easterly, Denise Walsh, Marianne Harzinski, Maureen Skoda, and just tons of other people. And others in various ways have helped the city of Johnstown and the rights, not only the city of Johnstown, but have pushed for the rights of women and shown that leadership can be handled by women. Like Betsy Gates Camara, who is treasurer of the Johnstown Cemetery Association, and Jane Sitterly, who is president of Wells House. In the arts, Linda Hinkle has always been there for many of the organizations with her graphics designs. In fact, the vote banners that hang from the city posts were designed by Linda. Whole groups of women exist, like the 100 Women Who Care, who have donated thousands of dollars to our community because of its founders, Audrey Klein and her daughter Shannon, Pat Beck, and Holly Chamberlain Bell. The Seroptimus group is also very active here, and I know that Anita Hanberg has always taken on committee assignments for there. Elizabeth Cady Stanton Hometown Association and its entire membership, whose focus has been important to equality and social justice, thanks to founders Lori Salamak, Deb Colesrud, and Nancy Brown. Its mission now is carried on by co-chairs Nancy Brown, Bonnie Valakovic, treasurers Barb Taylor, Ann Niles, and Secretary Ann Campos, with a lot of committee members that are willing to work countless hours for the kinds of things that Elizabeth Cady Stanton would have loved. Sandra Sweet Feisinger manages a sunflower shop that has a multitude of volunteer for women, and a name that's rather familiar in the business world here, and who is represented by one of her granddaughters, two of her granddaughters, Sylvia Nina Slingerland and Miracle Phillip. They're both here today to see this. I think Nina would have been very, very proud. And finally, all the members and supporters of the Women's Consortium who brought us here today. In particular, Sandy Mazeka and Helen Martin. They had the vision and the patience to see the project completed. And I'm sure more is going to be said about that as the program progresses. When I began to assemble the names of significant contributors to our community, I was struck by the sheer volume of names and women who should be acknowledged. One always runs into the risk of omitting significant names, but may I suggest to you, use this celebration as a time for conversation starters about others who have been inspired to use their talents and resources to benefit our community. The statue will always remind us, all of us, how far we have come and our role in planting more seeds of inspiration in our community.
Another huge thank you we need to give to today is our musicians, Reverend Blakesley and his crew, and Claire Wetterman and her original song that she'll be singing for us in a little while. So let's hear some of Reverend Blakesley and his friends play.
And we are hoping that you'll join us. If you have not yet picked up a songbook, find a songbook or get next to someone who has one. There are women wearing wonderful sashes wandering around among you. Pick up a songbook because the consortium has gone to great expense in putting together some lyrics from the 1918, 1919, and 1920 conventions. And the first one we're going to do is number 2. You'll find it in your booklet. It's called Freedom's Anthem. And even though you don't recognize the lyrics, the tune will be very easy. It is to the tune of a Stephen Foster piece called Swanee River. So we're hoping that you'll join with us. This song comes from 1919 at one of the great conventions that was held not too far from here to get out the vote for women. Freedom's Anthem, number 2, to the tune of Swanee River. Way up among the hills of morning, gleaming and bright, there shines the lamps of truth and justice, beating back the glooms of night. While scattered round about the planet, boasting of their might, then stand amid the light, denying the women of the race their right. Now all the world is sad and dreary everywhere they roam, while men deny their wives and mothers justice in the state and home. Proudly among the states and nations, just men proclaim equality of men and women in freedom's high and holy name. While creeping through the glooming shadows, blind men are found, still groping in the grim old ruins, wrong has scattered all around. Here we go. All the world is sad and dreary everywhere they roam, while men deny their wives and mothers justice in the state and home. When shall the sons of men grow
Across the women's triumph ring clear and strong, while all the nations join in singing freedom's universal song. Here we go! All the world is sad and dreary, everywhere they roam, when men deny their wives and mothers justice in the state and home. Very nice! You sounded pretty good.
Thank you. Now we're going to hear from some of our historians locally, and we're going to start first with our Fulton County historian, Samantha Hall Saladino.
I will. Oh, nice shade. Well, first I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the Elizabeth Cady Stanton Women's Consortium, especially Sandy Maseka and Helen Martin, for inviting me to share a few words today. I'm truly humbled to be a part of such an historic event right here in my own hometown. I like to think that Elizabeth Cady Stanton has followed me around for most of my life, or I guess maybe I've been following her. Like Elizabeth, I graduated from Johnstown schools and continued my education in Troy. But unlike Elizabeth, I was able to study whatever subjects I wanted. I was able to attend a 4-year college of my choosing. At Russell Sage College, I spent many hours in the park under the watchful gaze of the statue of Emma Willard, the founder of the Troy Female Seminary where Elizabeth studied because colleges did not admit women. While completing my undergraduate studies, I voted in my very first presidential election in 2008. I gathered with my other female classmates in Buckman Pavilion on campus to watch the inauguration for Barack Obama. It was because of the relentless fighting of Elizabeth and women like her, whose names we both remember and celebrate today, and those whose names have been lost to history, that I was privileged enough to have those experiences. And today, I'm privileged to work as the first woman Fulton County historian in preserving the stories of Elizabeth, thank you, in preserving the stories of Elizabeth and her contemporaries, Fulton County women who fought to be treated equally under the law, to own property, receive an education, manage her own finances, vote, and live a life on the terms of her own choosing. As James said, much work has been done, but there is still much more to do. When we studied the women's rights movement in one of my college courses, I excitedly took photos of the various historic sites connected to Elizabeth while home on holiday break, and sent them to my professor to brag about our hometown girl. He probably was already familiar with them, a thought which never occurred to me apparently, but I felt it was important to share the sites that helped shape Elizabeth in her formative years. Her name and legacy has become so inextricably linked to Seneca Falls and so tied to the year 1848 that sometimes those early years can get lost in the shuffle. There are many who have done and continue to do the good work of not letting that happen. Today marks a milestone in that effort, and so I would like to say, welcome home, Elizabeth.
Now I'd like to invite Noel Levy up, the City of Johnstown historian.
Thank you, Cindy. Can everybody hear me? I want to ask, who remembers a past local historian who always started his talks on Elizabeth Cady Stanton by starting it off with "Our gal Liz"? Anybody remember who that was? That was Mr. Louis G. Decker, past Fulton County historian and Gloversville historian. and he was a good friend of mine and a mentor. My talk is going to be our gal Liz and her early years in Johnstown, where she got her start in the suffrage movement. She talks about what happened in growing up in Johnstown and some of her dealings in here. It is only fitting that this statue be placed here, for it is here on this location that everything in young Elizabeth's world was close at hand. Her home on Main and Market, the church, Presbyterian Church on North Market, her school, the Johnstown Academy on South Market, and a couple blocks away, the jail, where Elizabeth and her friend, the daughter of Sheriff John Holland, would bring meals to the prisoners. Right over here is the courthouse where her father practiced law, and next to the courthouse was the Johnson House, where Elizabeth and her friend, the daughter of Sheriff Holland, would waitress most of the time during court season and when all the lawyers were in town eating dinner. Often they would eavesdrop on the lawyers to find out what's going on in court. A few blocks away at the end of East Green Street was the old mill pond, where Elizabeth and her friends would sail on a raft for entertainment. In her book, 80 Years and More, the first chapter is dedicated to her childhood and her youth years in Johnstown. In reading the first two paragraphs, it sounds like she's kind of analyzing herself, or she's trying to compare herself with her sisters. This is in her own words. The physical growth of a child is not influenced by days and years, but by the impressions passing events make on its mind. What may prove a sudden awakening to one, giving an impulse in a certain direction that may last for years, may make no impression on another. People wonder why children of the same family differ so widely. Though they may have had the same domestic discipline, the same school and church teaching, and have grown up under the same influences and with the same environments. As well, wonder why lilies and lilacs in the same latitude are not all alike in color and equally fragrant. Children differ as widely as these and primal elements of their physical and psychical life. Who can estimate the power of antennial influences or the child's surrounding in its earliest years? The effect of some passing word or sight on one that makes no impression on another. The unhappiness of one child under the certain home discipline is not inconsistent with the content of another under the same discipline. One, yearning for broader freedom, is a chaotic condition of rebellion. The other is more easily satisfied, quietly accepts the situation. Everything is seen from a different standpoint. Everything takes its color from the mind of the beholder. Like I said, it makes me think she's talking about herself here. When Elizabeth talks about what's going on in Johnstown, she describes what Johnstown was like in the early 19th century. She talks about her home. The Cady home was on the corner of Main and Market. Elizabeth described it as a two-story white frame house with a hall through the middle, rooms on either side, and a large back building with grounds on the side and rear, which joined the garden of our good Presbyterian minister, the Reverend Simon Husick. Daniel Cady's law office joined the house. That house was later split up and moved into other areas of the city to make room for Judge Cady's new house on the same corner. Elizabeth also said in the house, our favorite resorts of the house were the garret and the cellar. In the former were barrels of hickory nuts, and on a long shelf, large cakes of maple sugar and all kinds of dried herbs, sweet flag, spinning wheels, and a number of small white cotton bags filled with bundles marked in ink, silk, cotton, flannel, calico, etc., as well as ancient masculine and feminine costumes. This was forbidden ground. But nevertheless, we often went there on the sly, which made the little escapades more enjoyable. The cellar of our house was filled in winter with barrels of apples, vegetables, salt meats, cider, butter, pounding barrels, wash tubs, etc., offering admirable nooks for playing hide and seek. The cellar was on the level of a large kitchen where we played blind man's buff and other games when the day's work was done. These two rooms are the center of many of the merriest memories of my childhood days. Our nursery, a large room over the back building that was on Market Street, had 3 barred windows reaching nearly to the floor. 2 of these opened on a gently slanting roof over a veranda. In our night robes on warm summer evenings, we could, by dint of skillful twisting and compressing, get out between the bars and there, snugly braced against the house, we could sit and enjoy the moon and stars and what sounds might reach us from the streets, while the nurse, gossiping on the back door, imagined we were safely asleep. Before Elizabeth was old enough to appreciate the beauty of her surroundings, she thought Johnstown was a gloomy-looking town. The middle of the streets are paved with large cobblestones, over which farmers' wagons rattled morning till night, while the sidewalks were paved with small cobblestones, over which we carefully picked our way so that free and graceful walking was out of the question. The streets were lined with solemn poplar trees, from which small yellow worms were continually dangling down. Elizabeth and many other citizens were not very comfortable with the little critters. So the poplars were cut down and elms planted in their stead. She also tells of the annoying school and church bells, which seemed to be ever tolling for school, funerals, church, or prayer meetings. Next to the worms, these clanging bells filled me with the utmost dread. They seemed like so many warnings of eternal future. She talks a lot about the holidays, but one important holiday she talked about was the 4th of July in Johnstown. The 4th of July brought bonfires, fireworks, speeches, parades of soldiers, and booming cannons. The cannon shots and passionate political speeches about the American Revolution frightened Elizabeth, who later wrote, "No words can describe what I suffered with those explosions, great and small, and my fears lest King George would reappear and burn our houses." Patriotic speeches reminded Elizabeth that, as an American citizen, she had rights that no one could take away from her. From the book by Lori D. Ginsburg, she says, the Cadys were strict and staunch in when their children were raised according to old-fashioned norms of childhood, religion, class, and especially gender. Church, school, and family taught only that everlasting no, 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 and conspired to enforce the constant cribbing and crippling of a child's life. She would also say that everything we like to do is a sin, and everything we dislike is commanded by God or someone on earth. It was a perfect setting against which to rebel. And, as Elizabeth recalled fondly, she rebelled with gusto. Fast forward to November 12, 1895. Elizabeth is 80 years old, and there's a birthday celebration for her at the Metropolitan Opera House. At the same time, in Johnstown, the Johnstown Historical Society was meeting at the courthouse. They were also celebrating her birthday and invited the public to come out to tell their stories of what they remembered about Elizabeth, her sisters, her mother, her father, and her family. A month later, a reporter from the Daily Republican, a local newspaper, went down to New York City to interview Elizabeth. That was in December of 1895. The reporter entered her apartment, and Elizabeth immediately whipped out a portrait, which is up here in front, and brought it up to the reporter and asked the question, "What do you think of it?" was the question after a moment's pause. The reporter said, "It has a charming face, brimful of character and determination and courage. I also discover a strong family likeness." Elizabeth mused, "That is not strange, for it is my own portrait at age 20. You can trace all the features, but the short curly hair was brown then, though even at that age I had a number of gray hairs." She was silent a moment, and a little slow smile crept over her countenance as she gazed at the youthful face in the picture. Then she said softly, "I love to look at that girl. I like to study her and to think how she has fulfilled herself. Had she any distinct idea of what her career would be?" Long pause. "Yes, she had resolved upon that years before in Johnstown."
I'd now like to invite Thomas Ruler up, New York State Assistant Commissioner for Archives and Records and New York State Archivist. I was told to mention that he studied under Louis Decker, who wrote history about Fulton County when he was 10 years old, and that's kind of inspired him into his history career.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Yes, I knew Lou Decker, and I do attribute Lou as my mentor and put me on the path that brought me here today. And I am very grateful for the opportunity to be here today to share just a couple of words with all of you. As a young person growing up in Gloversville, I heard a lot about the Cady family, the Cady mansion, which Noel just talked about. It stood right here, right in this downtown area. And of course, I heard a lot about Elizabeth Cady Stanton. As a young person, you'll learn the shorthand story of those people who had a profound impact on the world we live in today. But as an archivist who is committed to ensuring that the documentary record reflects the full, accurate story of our past to help inform our present, I think it's important to put Elizabeth Cady Stanton's life here in Johnstown into context. Much of what I'm going to say is redundant of what we've heard already about what was going on here in Johnstown and in Elizabeth's life. To understand the magnitude of Elizabeth's struggle and to understand and take into account the weight of her efforts. The records that we preserve at the State Archives in Albany and in archives across the state and the nation help tell us the full story of pioneers like Elizabeth Cady Stanton. In 1815, when Elizabeth was born, the new republic had just emerged from the Second American Revolution, the War of 1812. Her father, Daniel, was finishing up his term in the State Assembly, and was already well on his way to being one of the most wealthy and influential people in the state of New York. But for Elizabeth, her prospects at the time were very limited. Court records and other records preserved at the state archives show the incredible burdens women, even women of privilege like Elizabeth, faced. It was not until 1848, as we learned from Verne, with the passage of the Married Women Property Rights Act, that women were able to meaningfully own and inherit property. When Elizabeth was born and living in Johnstown, and even after she was married in 1840, she had no meaningful property rights. Women had limited economic opportunity. A review of the enrollment records of the normal schools in New York indicates that teaching was one of the few opportunities available to women. Census records confirm that in 1900, 60% of women in the workforce were employed as domestic servants. As Samantha talked about, women have few educational opportunities. I mentioned the normal schools as one opportunity. Elizabeth Cady managed to convince her father to allow her to attend the Troy Female Seminary, now the Emma Willard School in Troy, which had only been established the year before Elizabeth was born. It was one of the first schools for women in the country. And of course, women had no right to vote, no voice in their government, no voice in the laws that controlled their lives. It wasn't until 1917 in New York State that women received the right to vote, and it wasn't until 1920 that that right became universal across the United States with the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. So here you have this young woman, this native of Johnstown, who left here when she was just 28 years old, whose statue we're going to see tonight. Daughter of one of the most prominent families in New York State, who was born into a world where she had no property rights. She had limited economic opportunity. She had limited educational opportunity and no right to participate in the political process. Who, despite all of that, despite all that we know about her context and the context of all of the women of her time, she persevered and helped to shape a better world. At the State Archives, we protect and preserve the evidence of the struggle, the evidence of the burdens that people like Elizabeth Cady Stanton had to overcome, and the facts of her life that all of the women of her era, to tell the full story of the world in which Elizabeth and all women lived. This statue is an essential reminder and celebration of the tremendous effort of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. It provides a gateway for all of us to remember the struggle, the impossible odds that she and others faced. And it gives us all hope that no matter what the struggle, and no matter how great the odds, if the struggle is right, we can overcome anything. Thank you, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and thank you, all of you.
I'd like to invite Mark Baraka up, representative from Governor Hochul's office for a presentation. The first woman governor. I think that Elizabeth would be proud.
Thank you, Cindy. And she couldn't say it any better. Let's give another round of applause for our first female governor of the great state of New York. I couldn't think of a better proclamation to give from Albany. This is actually one of the first ones that is signed by Governor Kathy Hochul. So again, in commemoration for this historic event, for Women's Equality Day, and on behalf of Governor Kathy Hochul, congratulations. Thank you all very much.
Now I'd like to invite Josh Williams up, representative from Congresswoman Lee Stefanik's office.
Congresswoman could not be here tonight, but I'm honored to be here in her stead, recognizing the legacy and memory of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Not only was she fundamental in securing voting rights, suffrage for women, she was also an outspoken abolitionist who co-founded the National Loyal Women's Movement, the Women's Loyal National Movement, in order to pressure Congress to finally pass the 13th Amendment, giving African Americans freedom here in the United States. And though she did not live to see the passage of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote, she was again instrumental in that passage. Today, there are 143 women serving in the 117th Congress. And back in 1866, before women even had the right to vote, Elizabeth Cady Stanton was the first woman to attempt to run for Congress. And as Mark said, just this week, we have the first female governor of New York State, and I think Elizabeth would be proud. Elizabeth Cady Stanton has a statue in Central Park in New York. She's immortalized in marble in the rotunda of the United States Capitol alongside presidents. And now today, she has a statue here in her hometown of Johnstown. On behalf of the Congresswoman's office, I would like to present this congressional record from the 117th Congress. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have some more sing-alongs. I want to hear y'all. Reverend Blakely, and then Claire Whitman will sing her original song, Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
How about this? I got it. We want you to find in your booklets song number 6, the Song of All the Ages. This is a song from 1920, the lyrics. The tune you will recognize is from the Battle Hymn of the Republic. So find song number 6 in your songbooks. If you are one of those naughty people who did not take a songbook because you don't let anyone tell you what to do, God bless you, my friend, because I can still have you sing along on the chorus. Sing the song of right and justice. Those are the words. Sing the song of right and justice. Let's hear the Song of All the Ages. Song number 6. There's a song that should be ringing like a trumpet round the world. There's a flag that should be floating over every sky unfurled. There's a cause that should triumphant, whose battle bolts are hurled as we go marching on. Sing the song of right and justice. Sing the song of right and justice. Sing the song of right and justice as we go marching on. That song is woman's anthem when she comes unto her own. That flag is women's banner and should float from zone to zone. That cause is right and justice should rule the world alone as we go marching on. Sing the song of right and justice. Sing the song of right and justice. Sing the song of right and justice as we go marching on. The song of all the ages, the song the world should sing, resounding o'er the planet where the highest anthems ring. The nation's hallelujahs and hosannas to the King as we go marching. Here's your last chance now. Sing the song of right and justice. Sing the song of right and justice. Sing the song of right and justice as we go marching on. Excellent out there, excellent. You're on, Claire. I want to raise up that mic a little bit so it's halfway between your voice and your guitar. We'll crank it up. Get close to that mic there. And this is song number 7. And as you come to the highlighted area, that's the chorus, verse number 2, you may certainly sing along.
I appreciated the stories that many people told today about Elizabeth Cady Stanton and her family. I did some research in the library and found some stories that I was very illuminated by. I found them very, very interesting, and that's why this song was written. So, yes, the chorus that Blake just mentioned. And you'll catch on to the tune pretty quickly, I think. The chorus has the same tune as the rest of the song. Is the mic okay? So the chorus, which is verse number 2 on the sheet, is O Eliezer. O Eliezer, my father's only son, I'll be so brave and try to do the things you might have done, the things you might have done. Born near Johnstown in 1815, after 80 years and more, many changes she had seen, many changes she had seen. Oh, Eliezer, my father's only son, I'll be so brave and try to do the things you might have done, the things you might have done. I love you, Henry, over others you had your sway. Some they were married, but you would not say I will obey, not say I won't obey. Oh, the slaves are not men, Mr. Garrison did say. This is Martin Stanton Club, a women's rights day, a women's rights day. All the slaves are not men, Mr. Garrison did say. This is Martin Stanton Club, a women's rights day, a women's rights day. That we can be free, said Lizzie, is the worst of all lies, unless we women also hold elective franchise, the elective franchise. Oh, Eliezer, her father's only son, I'll be so brave and try to do the things you might have done, the things you might have done. With Lucretia Mott, she shared a dream. With Susan B. Anthony, she made a team. She made a team. Equality for women, this banner they unfurl. You stir up Susan and she stirs up the world. She stirs up the world. If she'd have been a man, said Susan, things she might have done. But the Cady household only had one son. It only had one son. Oh, Eliezer, her father's only son, I'll be so brave and try to do the things you might have done, the things you might have done. She did not live to see the Women's Suffrage Day, yet Cady and we women will always have our say, we'll always have our say.
Now I'd like to invite up Colleen Jenkins, the great-great-granddaughter of Elizabeth.
Hello, how are you? Are you hot? Revolution requires heat. My name is Colleen Jenkins. I'm the great-great-granddaughter of Elizabeth Cady Stanton by matrilineal descent. Elizabeth had 7 children. Harriet is the one that marched in her footsteps. Harriet had Nora, who decided to go where nobody else went before. She became the first female civil engineer to graduate from Cornell University in 1905. And then she had my mother, an architect, and voila, we have a DNA mitochondrial descent from Elizabeth to me. So very often I get invited to speak around the nation about Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And because of Zoom and COVID, I was actually asked to speak at the American Consulate of Hong Kong and Macau. And it was in conjunction with University of Chicago in Hong Kong. I always start my remarks with Johnstown. So you of the regional development, I'm doing my best to get you known worldwide. And the reason I start with Johnstown is prior to being a manufacturing place, it was also an extremely important seat of law. And your courthouse is actually a colonial courthouse, and that is where Judge Cady presided. The house is right down here where a bank is, and so let's talk about the soup of law, which is important. Dr. Linda Kerber responded to my question, what did Elizabeth Cady Stanton do for democracy? And Dr. Linda Kerber replied, she connected women and law. Now, for example, you could look at Abigail Adams lobbying her husband, saying, please don't forget the women and the ladies, and please don't do the same injustice that King George did to you. So, but this is different. This is law, and the roots are here. You have a fabulous history. For instance, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, in the building right over there, it's the site, the building's not there, she had gotten a coral necklace for a Christmas present. She was about 10 years old. And Judge Cady also coached, since he knew the law, he had clerks studying with him. So one clerk said to her, the 10-year-old, oh, that's a nice necklace you have on. Who owns it? And the response, Elizabeth said, I just got it for a Christmas present. He said, oh, well, when you get married, your husband will own it. And if he chooses, he can swap that coral necklace for cigars, and your necklace will go up in smoke. And so here you have the law talking to a 10-year-old that has a sense of fairness. And I just want that to permeate her whole life, because really she spends 50 years working for women's rights. Now we're going to get to some amusing parts. For instance, if you were married in this area, where would you go for your honeymoon? Back then, you'd probably go, Niagara Falls or something like that? Well, she married an abolitionist who was the secretary of the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London. So of course you go there for your honeymoon. Keep your values consistent, right? When she got there, she was quite simply a 25-year-old bride of an abolitionist / attorney. There was another person who came, Lucretia Mott. She came as a delegate from Philadelphia across the Atlantic Ocean to London to speak, to attend the World Anti-Slavery Convention. What was the first order of business at that convention? You think it might be about slavery and the abolition of slavery. No, it was whether they would permit women to speak or not speak. And guess what the decision was? Not speak. So Elizabeth and this new person in her life, Lucretia Mott, roam the streets of London and say, hey, we have our own problem. It's very nice to talk about abolition, but what about women's rights? And back in London, they decided to have their first women's rights convention. So fast forward a few years, in 1848, in Seneca Falls, they have the first women's rights convention. And what's really important is that Johnstown is following Elizabeth to that convention, because the convention is just in a few days and they're struggling. What are we going to present to the world? And you know what they figure? Let's take the Declaration of Independence and tweak it. Whereas the Declaration of Independence is a grievance, a list of grievances about an autocratic King George III, well, we have our own grievances about the law that is around us. And Elizabeth is a radical. What a surprise. And so she has one of the grievances, and that's what we're going to focus on, is the right to vote, elective franchise. And here are her colleagues at the convention. And Lucretia Mott, who's older and more, seasoned, so to speak, she says, Elizabeth, they will make us look ridiculous, which is any outlier of any revolutionary movement is an outlier. And the reverse effect is that it can undermine more reasonable demands like access to higher education or remuneration for work but Elizabeth stood fast on the vote because that's the fundamental right of citizenship. Without that, you have no voice. So the convention, let me tell you that a while ago, there are great people in this audience that are real activists. A while ago, we made Seneca Falls and Johnstown sister cities because you're the roots of the Women's Rights National Park in Seneca Falls, where the first convention is. So the synergy between you two is amazing. And I want you to know that the stone was cast in Seneca Falls, and thereafter there were convention and convention and convention. And I'm going to truncate it by telling you about Edith Mayo, Curator Emeritus of the Smithsonian Institution. She is at the American History Museum of American History, and she said the women's suffrage movement was the largest bestowal of democratic freedoms in the history of the United States. Now, would anyone like to debate that with me? Just think that women are 51% of the population, so to give them a voice, a vote, the legal right to vote, that is a very powerful movement. And I'm sure people are very well educated here. I just wonder if your education ever presented an idea like that. So let me just fast forward to Elizabeth on her deathbed. This is exactly 1 month before she dies in 1902. So think, what are you going to be doing just before you die? Well, let me tell you what she did. She's writing a letter to President Theodore Roosevelt. And you have to remember, this is 1902, times of monopolies and Gilded Age. And so she goes through 8 pages of her history, her roots with all of these women's rights struggles. Of course, Johnstown is part of that. And her last sentence is amazing, in my opinion. She says to President Theodore Roosevelt, "Surely there is no greater monopoly than that of denying all women a voice in the laws they are compelled to obey." She died 1 month after. So when we are all mortal, that's not news. But when you're mortal, look to your successors. And fortunately, she had her daughter Harriet, who was a huge New York State suffrage organizer with marches up Fifth Avenue in New York City, lobbying Albany. And what's really great about New York State, already states and territories out in the West were granting women the right to vote because it was a more equal environment. But New York was the first state east of the Mississippi to grant women the right to vote. Yeah. So you were a turning point for the nation, because where New York went, then others would follow. Congratulations. So 20 years after her death, oh, by the way, my grandmother, who sat in the lap of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and was taught the rights and the wrongs from her grandmother, that person was also involved with the Horseback Crusade in Upper New York State. And churches were very kind and let them have their suffrage meetings there. And one time, the minister came out and introduced them. Then he fell down on the floor. They didn't know what to do. What do you do with the minister on the floor? So what they do is they drag him off to the vestry. And then what do? Do you cancel it because he's dead? No, you come back to the podium and you say, "He is feeling no pain. We will continue." And so that's the spirit of it. You know, you just keep going. You never give up. And so I want to say that we are 20 years after Elizabeth's death was the passage of the Federal Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the 19th Amendment. And it's really hard to change the Constitution. At that time, you needed 36 states. You need the will of Americans to change the Constitution. So let's say what we're celebrating now. It's really simple. It is the U.S. Constitution that protects all states, all citizens. The right of citizens to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. That's it. That's the revolutionary switch. So I thank you all for the pleasure of being here. I feel like I belong here because 200 years my family has either lived here or visited here. So it's a pleasure to be back with all of you. Oh, I forgot to say, one of the things I did is, with a friend, we made a commemorative item, because it's cold climate here, right? Sometimes, not now. But this is for Sandy Maseka, and I have others in the car. And so I thank everybody that's involved with creating this memorial.
Okay, my friends, find your booklets. It is number 8, and it bears a little explanation. This is from 1920, and it starts out sounding like maybe it's not a very good set of lyrics to sing on Women's Equality Day. But it's a parody, and even in 1920, they had a real sense of parody. It begins by asking all the questions that pig-headed men were asking about why those cursed women want the vote. When they have everything they need, they have men to take care of them, they have sons to look after them, why are they so uppity and wanting the vote? But you'll find it all is redeemed in the last 2 verses as the answer comes ringing clear why women should have the vote. It's number 8, and it's to the tune of, "Oh dear, what can the matter be?" Oh dear, what can the matter be? Dear, dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Women are wanting the vote. Women have husbands, they are protected. Women have sons by whom they're directed. Women have fathers, they're not neglected. Why are they wanting to vote? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Dear, dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Women are wanting the vote. Women have homes, there they should labor. Women have children whom they should favor. Women have time to learn of each neighbor. Why are they wanting to vote? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Dear, dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Women are wanting the vote. Women have reared all the sons of the brave. Women have shared in the burdens they gave. Women have labored your country to save. That's why we're wanting to vote. Last verse is on the bottom. Oh dear, what can the matter be? Dear, dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be when men seem to want every vote? You sounded very snarky and sarcastic. Good job. While we set up for Claire to come up and sing her next song, I want you to join me in one other song while they're setting this up. You can move that over. You'll find this song as number 3, and it's an echo song. Patient. It's an echo song, number 3, so it's very easy to do. I will do the words, and you simply need to echo the song after me. Very simple. Let me sing a little bit of it, and then you'll learn how it goes, and then you can be the echo. We're gonna keep on walking forward. Keep on walking forward. Keep on walking forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Let's try it like an echo. I'll go first, you be the echo.
We're gonna keep on walking forward.
We're gonna keep on walking forward.
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 Never turning back.
Never turning back.
Never turning back.
Never turning back.
Now you've got the hang of it. Sing with a little gusto now. We're gonna keep on walking proudly.
Keep on walking proudly.
Gonna keep on walking proudly.
Keep on walking proudly.
Gonna keep on walking proudly.
Keep on walking proudly.
Never turning back.
Never turning back.
Oh, never turning back.
Never turning back.
We're gonna keep on singing loudly.
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 Never turning back.
Never turning back.
And never turning back.
Never turning back.
We're gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Oh, never turning back. And my favorite verse, we're gonna work for change together. We're gonna work for change together. We're gonna work for change together. Never turning back. And never turning back. Excellent, you sounded great. Here's Claire again as she leads you in singing another song.
This is Lift Every Voice. This is Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is #1 in your program if you have a program. And I included this song because of all the sacrifices and struggle of so many people for their understanding of America and what she can be. Lift every voice and sing.
Take some feedback because you're in front of the mic. There you go. Sorry, Claire, take a deep breath and start again.
Well, where should I stand? Right there.
Same place,
Is this
just
okay?
take that mic.
Okay. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with
rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Sounds great hearing you sing along. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers and mothers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Rest our feet, stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Once more on that line. True to our God, true to our native land. Thank you so much. I'm going to do one more song with the help of Blake playing the banjo, and this is number 13, and it is a very familiar one for you, America the Beautiful, in A. Oh, she used the pick, so where did I just put it?
I'm with you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay, before we get to a main reason you all came here today, I just want to remind you about ice cream and the Mack truck over there after we're done. And also right here at the church, St. John's Episcopal Church at 7, they're going to have wheels of change, so be sure to get your dinner and then go on over to the church and enjoy that. But now I'd like to introduce Sandy Maseka. I think by seeing everyone here today talking to her, I think you all know her already. But she is the catalyst behind this whole project. And she's going to say a few words.
Is that good? Yeah, right there. Welcome home to Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Johnstown's native daughter and world-renowned abolitionist and suffragist. Elizabeth's statue has been a long time in coming. Close to 150 people from all over the country, but mostly Fulton County, donated to this endeavor. Elizabeth forever changed the social and political landscape of the United States by succeeding in her work to guarantee rights for women and slaves. She and her compatriots were warriors for universal suffrage. They were inclusive. They believed that all citizens, not just white men, are the voters. When she married Henry Stanton, a well-known abolitionist, she shared in his cause, but soon found that women had no voice in that battle. She met several women during that time of her life, and soon they organized the first Women's Right Convention in Seneca Falls in 1848. Elizabeth's ideology was formed in her early life here in Johnstown. She was always listening and learning at her dad's law office and at the Fulton County Courthouse. She was disgusted by the inequitable laws. She spent her life working for the betterment of women. Her unwavering dedication to women's suffrage resulted in the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote. She was a prolific writer and known as the Sunflower, which was her pen name. The sunflower later became a symbol of the suffrage movement. In 1866, she was the first woman to run for Congress and the first to receive votes cast for a woman. Elizabeth was one of the great feminist intellectuals of all time. She fought for freedom, justice, and voting rights for all. Elizabeth Cady Stanton traveled the world during the Victorian era and promoted rights for women and supported them in a time when women were treated as second-class citizens. She spent her childhood in her dad's law office and learned the law at his feet when women were not allowed to be lawyers or even attend college. She was born in upstate New York in Tryon County. Later it was Fulton County, and she never was recognized locally. She's recognized in Seneca Falls, Tenafly, New Jersey, New York City, even Washington, D.C. But finally now she will be honored here in upstate New York, where her ideas took root and her lifelong values and goals were formed. A little upstate girl who became world famous. If it were not for Elizabeth, the rights of women would have taken a much longer route to come to fruition. It is long overdue to recognize Elizabeth, our local heroine. This statue will put Fulton County on the map and on the New York History Trail. So let us all acknowledge and celebrate our local claim to fame. Welcome home, Elizabeth. Now we're going to go over.
Elizabeth fought for social justice every step of the way, and we are trying to fulfill her goals for equality for all. This statue will stand as a tribute to all women. It will always remind us of how far we have come, and it will encourage girls to be all that they can be.
Oh, unveiling?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
want to say something? No. Yeah.
Yeah, good with it.
Colleen, I was have the, yeah. Let's have a chat. Oh, and she's writing. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
That's a picture.
Oh, what?
That's a picture.
A picture. Thank you for doing this. How about the girl? What's your daughter's name?
Stand over on the side.
Sandra, come. You're Sandra. Come. Laura. Sit right here, because all of this is done for the future. You're the future. Want to have a little chat with her?
Well, get over here.
Hey, Sandy. What is she writing? Laura, look here.
My name is Matt Glenn. I'm the president of Big Statues, and it's an honor and a privilege to be with you today. What a wonderful community Johnstown is. I have the opportunity to tour your amazing courthouse and feel the history that's here, and it's been truly an experience. And I am thankful for the opportunity to work with Sandy and with Helen and to create this sculpture that will stand forever and let us all know that we are all created equal.
Yeah.
And that we all, as a country, can accomplish anything that we put our hearts and minds and souls to. So thank you very much. And when you sit with Elizabeth, I hope that you will have that thought in your mind that you can do anything. I love the representation of the sunflowers and how they represent adoration, loyalty, and longevity. And Elizabeth's legacy is the ultimate in longevity because it will go on forever. Thank you very much.
Okay, so these are my concluding remarks. My family, as I've already said, either lived here or came passing through to Seneca Falls down to Greenwich, Connecticut. But you all would be asleep a lot of times when we pass through. Where's the action? So this will be open 24/7, and anybody can have a little chat with Elizabeth.
Thank you. Yes.